300 tons of steel on the move. A heavy haulage double bill. A 100-kilometer obstacle course. Narrow roads become bottlenecks. At railroad crossings, the overhead contact lines are hung too low. Small bridges that wouldn't bear the weight without special reinforcements. Miserable weather, slush, and the use of special equipment. And inclines that can only be climbed by 2 tractor units working as one. The Danube, near Aschach in Upper Austria. 2 real steel monsters have arrived here by ship. Autoclaves, in other words, industrial ovens that have to be transported from here to an aircraft component company by road. To lift the 140 and 160-ton autoclaves out of the ship, the heavy haulage company has set up a gigantic crane. With ballast, it weighs almost 800 tons and can lift up to 750 tons. Nevertheless, lifting the autoclaves out of the ship is problematic. Project manager Günther Wimmer is tense.
The ship can't be completely fixed in position in the Danube, of course, so the unloading process is always difficult, because the ship could start to sway. So we really have to watch out that we don't touch the sidewalls.
Because that would damage both the freight and the ship. So that the steel giants don't lose their balance when lifted, the haulage company employees attach a roughly 10-meter-long crossbeam to the crane hook. Each end of the crossbeam is fitted with a gigantic shackle with 2 slings, each of which can withstand a load of 100 tons. Installing them is very hard work. While modern crane technology makes some things easier, a lot of the work still has to be done by hand. Each of the steel shackles, for example, weighs 425 kilograms. That means watching out for your feet.
As you can see, pulling the textile slings isn't something the guys can do sitting down, but it keeps you in shape. Careful, watch your fingers.
The boom needs...
We're skewed.
Oh.
Lower boom.
Uwe, you there? Stop.
Now. Yeah, perfect.
On the road behind the crane, the first tractor-trailer unit is moving into position. A tractor unit with 650 horsepower and 3 drive axles. The load will be put on this low-bed trailer. It has a total of 12 axles that can be steered by remote control. For better load distribution, each axle has 8 wheels. The tractor-trailer unit has an overall length of around 45 meters. The crane raises the crossbeam and slews it towards the ship. Things are now getting pretty serious for crane operator Jan-Peter Körner.
The challenge with these loads is to lift them up absolutely precisely. You need an experienced team and to work with radios.
His contact on board the ship is Manfred Capella. He's also a crane operator and knows exactly what damage the 1.2 million euro monster can do if even the slightest mistake is made.
It can bang against the ship's wall or on the center. You can't imagine what could happen.
The crossbeam has to be centered precisely over the autoclave. Otherwise, it will sling uncontrollably in the ship when it's lifted.
I'm ready.
Okay.
We can start lifting now. That means we'll inform the water police so that they can stop shipping traffic on the Danube. As soon as I have their okay, we can start lifting. Hey, we'd like to start if that's okay with you. Thanks.
Crane operator Jan-Peter Körner now takes up the slack, very slowly. The autoclave only swings slightly when it's lifted from the ship floor.
Stop. The ship's moving a bit. The autoclave's moving. And we're clear. Raise cable.
The first lift went smoothly. The 140-ton steel colossus is set down safely on the low bed trailer. The autoclave has to be precisely in the center. Otherwise, the transporter could start to tilt. So that the load doesn't slip during the journey, it's secured with tensioning chains. The second autoclave should be lifted out of the ship now, but nothing's happening.
We have a problem. The stud where the sling's attached is down there. There are 2 boxes there as well. I don't want to tear the boxes off. So we're going to put something in there now.
Wood. Project manager Günther Wimmer takes the square timbers on board himself. Manfred Capella squeezes between the load and the side wall and slides the timbers behind the sling, over the boxes, between and beneath them.
Yanchi, raise cable, please.
Now the second lift can start too.
Hey, hey. So we've raised the second autoclave. Because this autoclave weighs 20 metric tons more, we have to change the radius on the ballast. To do that, we're now going to push the ballast trailer out an additional meter. That means we have to balance the crane. Too much ballast at the rear would mean the crane would fall over backwards. Too little ballast at the rear and the same would happen forwards. We don't want that.
Because that would be a complete disaster. After 5 hours, both of the autoclaves have been transferred, almost precisely on schedule.
Yeah, we have to deal with the 35-minute delay because of the additional timber. We had to improvise. But otherwise, we're ready to set off. Let's hope the weather stays like this, that it doesn't get any colder. Of course, the worst that could happen is sleet. Then we'll be forced to wait.
And that would really disrupt the tight schedule. Exactly 3 days remain for 100 kilometers of country roads with innumerable obstacles. The mega cargo's destination is a big factory in Reichersberg, Upper Austria. FACC manufactures aircraft parts. From interior cabin trims and wing elements to engine components like these thrust reverser elements. They consist of carbon fibers, synthetic resin, and special honeycomb cores. The individual materials have to be bonded together to form highly resilient components. That's done in gigantic ovens called autoclaves. Here, the composite elements are heated under pressure and harden for 4 hours at 180 degrees Celsius. The company currently operates 15 such autoclaves. Because its order books are full, the factory is eagerly awaiting the 2 new ones which, if all goes well, should arrive in 3 days.
Delivery has now been delayed for over a week, so we now have to make sure that we get the autoclaves up and running as quickly as possible so we can implement our expansion plans.
In Aschach, the heavy haulage vehicle is due to set off in a few minutes. Transport escort company boss Franz Gruber is carrying out a final inspection.
We have to watch the height and our width. The most important thing is the height. Every cable is hazardous, whether it's an electric or a telephone cable. That's important. It's well lit. It's lashed down properly. It's completely okay.
That means the transporter is ready to go. "7 p.m., the convoy departs. On sections without obstacles, the transport speed is up to 20 kilometers per hour. After about 1 kilometer, the heavy haulage vehicles have to stop briefly.
We're waiting because we've got permission to shut the power off in the next two places starting at 8 p.m. Some cables have to be shut off because we can't keep to the safety clearance, and some have to be taken down. During the first stage, there are some places that will almost certainly be without power for an hour because we have to get through them with both transporters.
10 minutes later, the convoy sets off again. Each of the two tractor-trailer units is 45 meters long. But because the low-bed trailer module's axles can be steered individually, the curves along the route won't pose a problem. Günther Wimmer always drives ahead of the transporters. He's familiar with each of the numerous obstacles.
We've got about another 500 meters to go. Then we'll reach the first bridge that isn't statically strong enough for the heavy load. So we have to carry out the first special action there so that we can cross this bridge.
Structural engineers have calculated the carrying capacity of this bridge to be 220 tons, which means the tractor-trailer unit, with the heavier of the two autoclaves, is 12 tons too heavy. The men therefore uncouple the 35-ton tractor unit from the trailer. The tractor unit then drives to the other end of the bridge. The transport crew connects the tractor unit and the low-bed trailer with slings.
We're going to tow the trailer over the bridge so that the weight of the tractor unit isn't on it. The trailer will be steered by remote control so that it remains on track.
The tractor unit moves off slowly and the slings take up the tension. While crossing, the load has to remain precisely in the center so that the loads at the sides of the bridge are the same, because that too could severely damage the structure. Half an hour after reaching the bridge, the first autoclave has passed the obstacle.
The second one is 20 tons lighter, so the conditions for crossing the bridge are different. It can drive normally over the bridge at 5 kilometers an hour. There's nothing stopping us now, off we go.
The road ahead is clear for the next few minutes. The first bottleneck crops up in Efferding. At this intersection, the heavy haulage vehicles should actually turn right.
We can't turn right because the intersection's too tight. On the inside, there's also a house that's in the way. So now we have to change direction.
That's done by attaching the tractor unit that was at the front to the rear of the low-bed trailer. In the other direction, crossing the intersection now no longer poses a problem for the two heavy-duty haulage vehicles. As the convoy moves on, the advance party is already sorting out the next problematic area. A large roundabout. Here, the men from the Transport Escort Service place heavy steel plates onto the traffic islands.
We put the steel plates down so the grass isn't damaged and the low bed trailer doesn't sink in.
Wooden wedges are placed against the sharp-edged curbs. Otherwise, the transport vehicle's tires could be severely damaged and, in the worst case, could even burst. Several traffic signs also have to be removed. The majority can simply be pulled out once their ground anchor has been released. Others offer more resistance. The use of a special tool built by the transport escort company also proves unsuccessful. Franz Gruber, the boss, has to lend a hand as well. Just in time, because the transport convoy is already coming. After the preparatory work, crossing the traffic islands is no problem. The low bed trailer's axle modules actually remain horizontal. The swing axles balance out the height differences. Each wheel pair can individually move upwards over an obstacle or compensate downwards. Project manager Günther Wimmer has painstakingly listed all of the obstacles along the route in advance and stored them on his tablet.
This is the tool that we constantly need so we can give the drivers instructions. Go left at the traffic island, go right. And we always have to coordinate with utility companies or cable providers. And the telephone company for all the telephone cables.
Transporters had also assumed that the TV cable they now have to pass beneath had been hung higher by the cable provider. Unfortunately, this quickly proves to be incorrect.
Did you hit the cable?
Yep.
Cables that haven't been removed are removed.
It's also a real close shave at the roof gutter of the next house. Too close.
We might have touched the roof gutter. We'll have to see tomorrow in daylight whether anything's damaged. The TV cable has been torn off, either because the company that was supposed to remove it isn't there right now, or something else. It's down now anyway. Basically, we've removed the cable ourselves.
Günther Wimmer will contact the cable provider and the owner of the house with the possibly damaged roof gutter tomorrow. He has other concerns right now: a railroad crossing.
The guys have been putting their foot on the gas a bit too hard. Now we're slightly ahead of schedule, so we'll have to wait until the railroad team arrives.
They arrive 5 minutes later. First, a work locomotive, whose crew has to deal with the voltage in the overhead contact line. Then a truck on rail wheels to lift the line on one side of the railroad crossing. On the other side, a unimog with a cherry picker is going to raise the overhead contact line. To do that, the railroad workers mount it on the rails using auxiliary running gear. However, the men can only approach the overhead contact line once it's certain that the electricity has been shut off.
We've grounded the contact line with the vehicle and a grounding bar. We put it on and that grounds the contact line.
That means the overhead contact line has been connected to the rails via the locomotive.
Grounding is always important because there are 900 volts in there. You have to switch off, check there's no voltage, ground and short circuit. We can't work with voltage there. That would be fatal for us.
Next step, lifting the tensioning weights, which ensure that the overhead contact line doesn't sag during normal operation. Only now can the men in the cherry pickers release the overhead contact line's bolts and raise the line on both sides of the crossing. The lines have to be raised 2.5 meters so that the heavy haulage vehicles can pass beneath them. The convoy is now approaching the most critical point of tonight's journey. In Pambachkirchen, the route is extremely tight. It passes between the houses and past trees. But before the transporter reaches this extreme bottleneck, there are two unexpected obstacles in the way: lanterns that are sticking out over the road. A company was supposed to move them out of the way. Now the street lighting has to be swung to the side at the last minute. Then comes the nightmare situation that the transport crew has encountered on previous missions. A balcony that narrows the roadway to precisely 6 meters 52. At 6 meters 45, the autoclaves are only 7 centimeters narrower. The first attempt has failed. The transporter has to back up and try again. This time, the truck driver keeps further to the right. But a securely mounted street lamp is in the way. The only option is to lower the transporter a little using the hydraulic system. The second attempt.
Rise a bit more at the back.
Okay, are we passed?
Yes, you're good.
That fits. Have we got space at the back? That fits. Okay. That fits perfectly.
Done. The first transporter is through. Things will be easier for the second one. The crew knows how far the low bed trailer has to be lowered and the optimal angle for approaching the obstacle. Project manager Günther Wimmer is relieved and very pleased with his team.
It's not just the truck driver, it's the whole team. Everyone has to work together from start to finish. If things don't work out, the balcony comes down, and I think the house owner is waiting for the right company to pay for it. As things stand, that's not us this year. But we'll be back.
1.5 hours after reaching the town, the convoy finally makes it through. Now, it's only a few kilometers to the destination of the first leg. The first stopover is here in this parking area in the town of Weizenkirchen, after 30 kilometers. The convoy with the 2 autoclaves took almost 6 hours to reach it.
Today actually went quite well. We removed a cable like professionals. The cable company will have to reinstall it tomorrow. Nevertheless, the difficulties and challenges continue.
Finally, the transport crew has completed the first leg. 3 still to go. And the 70 kilometers to the final destination are going to be far from easy. Day 2 of the heavy-duty transport. It's almost 10 a.m. This morning, the transport crew can take things easy at first, because today's route includes an obstacle that first has to be prepared. Bridge over a stream. If crossed normally, it could collapse under the weight of the transporters. A special solution is required. Werner Helperstorfer is an expert for cases like this. He's arrived with a big setup team. Among experts, the system intended to keep the bridge from collapsing is called a flyover.
We've got a hydraulic bridge crossing system. That means it rests on each of the bridge's columns, at the front and the rear. It's used to drive over the bridge with a ramp system without directly loading the bridge.
The crossing system is a bridge over the bridge, so to speak. It weighs 30 tons, is 15 meters long, 3 meters wide, and can hold a weight of 500 tons. Hydraulic bridges are mounted on the crossing system. With their help, the steel construction can virtually unload itself from the truck. Once the hydraulic rams are fully extended, the low-bed trailer moves forward. The crossing system then lowers again, but it can't be set down on the bridge foundations just yet. Load distributor plates first have to be placed under the ends of the construction so that the weight isn't placed directly on the bridge foundation.
These are the safety pins. 3 of them are inserted, and the ramp is then practically held on with these bolts, so it can't slip away when it's driven on.
The access ramps are 6 meters long and weigh around 2 tons each. While they're being positioned at the front, the setup crew is already unbolting the hydraulic bridges from the crossing system.
As you can see here, the bridge has been coated with sand. It's like coarse sandpaper. That prevents the tires from spinning when driving on due to the traction. It offers better grip.
Now, the hydraulic bridges have to be taken down from the crossing system. They're set down next to the bridge. Werner Helperstorfer takes a look at the whole construction from the side.
You can clearly see here that there's really no load on the bridge, that we're really only resting on the foundations at the front and rear. The cracks you can see there indicate that the bridge has already suffered a lot of strain in its lifetime. And you can clearly see that we're positioned ahead of the cracks. That means nothing will happen when we drive over.
The truck with the crane drives onto the construct first. The front hydraulic bridge also has to be removed before the descent ramps can be positioned at the end of the bridge. Just as the setup work is coming to an end, the transport convoy with the 2 giant autoclaves arrives. The first crossing begins with a weight of 232 tons. Precision work once again. The transporter has to remain precisely on track because there's minimum clearance on both sides. Despite the height difference between the road and the crossing system, the transporter remains horizontal. The axle module's hydraulic system balances out the difference in levels. Crossing the stream has taken almost 3 hours, including setting up the crossing system.
That really went well. Setup took maybe 20 minutes longer than expected, but that's always the case the first time. The team's faster the second time, and the third time they set records like in the Formula One. Now we're clear again all the way to today's second destination.
Unless something unforeseen were to happen. The next few kilometers are initially unproblematic. Country roads without towns with tight spots and only elongated curves. It's almost like taking a break for the drivers of the 650 horsepower tractor units.
We have the route plan, and it's helpful if you read through it, of course. You don't have to be familiar with the entire route, but it's good if you know where the most difficult spots are.
No problems are really expected over the following route section. The road winds through the forest alongside a stream. But in combination with the wet road, the incline is tricky. Suddenly, the convoy comes to a halt. The tractor unit's wheels are no longer gripping.
It's slippery here, wet.
Starting off again under these conditions? Too hazardous. But the specialists have also planned for events like this.
Pushing truck. That's what it's there for.
The truck that always drives between the transporters is now coupled to the back of the low bed trailer to push it. With combined forces, the journey resumes. The tractor unit might also have managed on its own, but that could have seriously damaged the 35-ton vehicle's powertrain.
The main problem is always that enormous forces act on the tractor unit and the pushing car when they set off. And at some point, little ailments crop up because of too much force when starting off. And that leads to repairs that cost a lot of money.
Just before nightfall, the heavy haulage vehicle double bill reaches the second day's destination. The two steel giants are parked for the night at a gas station in the town of Jagan. A3 of the heavy-duty transport. Just before setting off, the truck drivers have to top up the hydraulic units on the axle modules. The hydraulic system needs oil to steer the low-bed trailers, to raise and lower them, and to keep them horizontal. The convoy with the two 45-meter-long tractor-trailer transporters then sets off on the third leg. Today, they have to cover 34 kilometers. That doesn't sound like much, but the convoy constantly has to stop over the first few kilometers. Branches are hanging so far over the road that they could damage the red-covered attachments on the €1.2 million autoclaves. These compulsory brakes give the team up ahead time to deal with an invisible but hazardous problem area. There's a pipe running underneath the road.
We've got a gas pipeline under here. And to protect it, because it isn't buried deep enough, we've now got to put these steel plates down so that we distribute the pressure over a wider area. Okay, let's get on with it.
Project manager Gunther Wimmer also lends a hand so the plates are put down faster. Without these plates, the underground gas pipe could be damaged.
And we don't even want to think what could happen then.
Or, to put it plainly,
a complete catastrophe. The pipeline could rupture and then we could have a gigantic explosion.
Everything went well. The convoy has passed the danger point. However, at the intersection after the pipeline, yet another stop. The 45-meter-long transporters can't get around the corner. The only thing they can do is change direction. To do this, the tractor unit has to be unhitched from the front of the low-bed trailer, turn, and be recoupled at the back.
Changing direction is always tricky. It's a 90% certainty that the coupling won't work exactly when you need it to. You have to plan the schedule a bit more generously so you can stick to it roughly.
Now the convoy can cover some distance and make good on some kilometers. But it's barely back on schedule again when the next involuntary stop crops up. A power line over the road is hanging too low and has to be raised, but the preparations haven't been completed yet. For the transport crew, it's a welcome opportunity for a light snack. Franz Gruber, the boss of the transport escort company, has a trunk full of sausage and baked goods. A simple but welcomed meal.
I'd say you have to take what you can get, right? Even if France's shoes are next to it. Cheesy sausage.
There are still 20 kilometers to go to the destination FACC, which manufactures aircraft parts at its plant. Preparations for the autoclave's arrival are already underway in a newly built hall. One of them is destined for this pit in the floor. It will only be secured on one foundation strip. On the others, it will be able to shift because the autoclave expands when the aircraft components are heated. The employees of the setup crew position heavy supports in a recess in the foundation pit. They bridge the difference in height versus the edge of the foundation with an African hardwood that's also called red ironwood due to its hardness. The construction is required as a substructure because rails are now being installed over a length of 35 meters on both sides of the foundation.
Our crane will be put on the train tracks. That means 4 boots with 2 beams. And once the autoclave is in, we'll take it over with the crane and position it on the foundation.
The setup team has to hurry because the autoclaves are due to arrive here in 24 hours. The heavy haulage vehicles with the 2 autoclaves are now coming up to another difficult obstacle, the A8 freeway, which they have to cross. The 2 steel giants on the low bed trailers won't fit through the underpass because they have a transport height of almost 8 meters.
That's why we have to use a neighboring bridge over the freeway. It's the same old story there too. One transporter is statically okay, but the second one with the 160-ton autoclave is too heavy. That means we need a special solution to cross the bridge again.
And that's rather complicated. The transport crew has to remove the rear 4-axle module from the low bed trailer, a very strenuous job. First, the front axle module connecting bolts are removed. Then, the men crawl underneath the load to remove the tie rods that are used to steer the individual axles. The axle module can't be taken away just yet. First, the conversion crew has to position supports under the autoclave's rear beams and raise them slightly with wood. Then, they hydraulically lower the rear axle module so that the supports take over the load and a tractor unit can remove the module beneath the autoclave. Now, the Heavy Load Industries all-purpose weapon comes into play. An SPMT, a self-propelled modular transporter steered by remote control. It has 4 axles, 2 of which are driven hydraulically. A 6-cylinder diesel engine with 690 horsepower delivers the necessary power. The SPMT now moves beneath the autoclave. The men fasten it to the remainder of the low bed trailer with a gigantic coupling pin. Tomorrow, the SPMT will push the 160-ton steel giant over the freeway bridge, an undertaking that may prove difficult because the weather forecast is terrible. 7 a.m., day 4 of the transport. Sleet. The crucial question is whether to start crossing over the freeway now or whether to wait and hope it stops snowing. The transport crew decides to start right away. The bridge over the freeway is 60 meters long. Before the convoy can cross, there's some preparatory work to be done because the authority's structural engineers have imposed clear conditions.
Die beiden Transporte müssen
Both transporters have to drive precisely in the center of the bridge. The smaller one can deviate by 20 centimeters either side, the bigger one only by 10 centimeters. Now we have to mark the roadway accordingly. Of course, the weather's, well, really awful. Once again, we've got exactly what we didn't want or need today, but you have to make the best of things.
The first of the two autoclaves approaches. Because it weighs 20 tons less than the other, it can cross the bridge with its tractor unit.
Great. You're on. Exactly.
So I can't stop now.
The tractor unit barely has any grip on the slush. If it stopped, it would be unable to start off again. Fortunately, the first transporter makes it over in one go.
It was the right decision not to wait, to start right away. As you can see when you look at the bridge, it's getting worse every 5–10 minutes.
Not good for the second transporter with the 160-ton steel giant. The tractor unit drives onto the bridge. There, the transport crew uncouples it from the low-bed trailer. Otherwise, it would be too much weight for the bridge. Now the remote-controlled SPMT has to transport the load over the bridge by itself.
Stefan, get over. Get over, get over, get over.
Done. Everyone involved is relieved, particularly the driver of the tractor-trailer unit.
We were lucky. It was icy on the bridge. And we just had enough grip to get across, because there was a small incline. But everything went well.
The tractor unit is now coupled to the front of the transporter. Once the transport crew has positioned the supports beneath the autoclave's side beams again, the SPMT moves out from under the load. Its work is done. It's replaced with the original module again. The convoy still has one big obstacle to overcome.
What might be difficult is the next hill, because it's still snowing. If the snow remains and it freezes, then we have a problem. Then we'll have to come up with a different solution because that road isn't gridded.
And not even a snowplow would help if there's ice on the incline. The transport crew is taking no chances. A second tractor unit is coupled to the front of the first one with a tow bar. That should provide enough power to cope with the incline, even if the road is slippery. The crew of the second transporter is forced to wait. The additional tractor unit returns once the first transporter has made it up the incline. With a total of 1,300 horsepower, the 20-ton heavier tractor-trailer unit should make it up the hill as well.
Off we go.
Off we go.
Because the driver of the rear tractor unit can't see ahead, the front driver gives him instructions by radio.
We're coming up to the trees. A right-hand bend. Now there's a ditch on both sides. We're stopping here and uncoupling.
Done. The third tractor unit won't be needed for the remainder of the route. It's uncoupled. After passing through a few small villages, the two heavy-duty transporters part ways. The first drives to a parking area because the foundation for the autoclave at the plant isn't ready yet. The second, larger one only has a couple of 100 meters to go. After a total of 100 kilometers on the road, it too has reached its destination, the aircraft parts manufacturer FACC in Reichersberg. But the heavy haulage company employees face another difficult task here as well. They have to transport the autoclave into the foundation bed at the rear end of the hall in the new building. The installation work is the highlight of the company employees' day. The tractor unit pushes the low bed trailer with freight into position. If possible, the 160-ton autoclave has to be centered beneath the lifting gantry, so that the hydraulic rams on the one side are not loaded any more than those on the other side. The transport crew has completed its mission on time, although there were a few close shaves along the way.
We made it. That's the most important thing. The rest doesn't matter. The weather was a bit stressful towards the end of the day. That was a bit of a challenge. Maybe we needed that. Now we're going to hand it all over to our colleagues from the lift handling crew. Then they're responsible for unloading and rough adjustment on the foundation.
And that won't go as smoothly as planned. The lifting department employees are just about to attach the 98mm thick steel slings to the autoclave when the transport crew suddenly discovers that the haul is too low for the intended purpose. So the transport crew's work isn't finished just yet. The low bed trailer has to back up a little.
Well, we've now discovered that the height isn't sufficient for us to get the unit beneath the autoclave.
And that means that the transport crew has to remove the hydraulic unit mounted onto the rear of the low bed trailer. That takes time. Almost 20 minutes pass before the forklift truck can finally move the unit to the side. Then the heavy load team moves the autoclave back under the lifting gantry and attaches the steel lifting slings to the studs. Finally, the tensioning chains that secured the freight during the journey have to be removed. Lifting can begin. The hydraulic gantry raises the autoclave at a snail's pace. Once it's taken over the weight, the low bed trailer can drive out of the hall. With a load of 160 tons, the lifting gantry moves centimeter by centimeter along the rails towards the foundation bed. Covering the 20 meters takes almost half an hour. But the lifting gantry operator can't set the autoclave down on the foundation just yet. First, a cutting torch has to be used to remove a steel beam that was only welded onto the autoclave to transport it. Now, finally, the autoclave can be set down on the foundation. The aircraft parts manufacturer's plant manager is relieved.
Incredible. After 3 weeks transport by ship and on the special transporter, we've done it. We've brought our baby home. Now we're going to prepare to install it over the next 3 months so we can start production immediately.
The transport took 4 days. After lifting out of the ship, 100 kilometers were covered by road. Through narrow towns in which mere millimeters were crucial, and over bridges that had to be fitted with special crossing constructions. 300 tons of steel on the move, a heavy haulage double bill that cost around €500,000.